had this deep feeling in my body that dawned on me that there is something absolutely unaligned in my behavior. I realized that it's not just my voice, it has been happening with my mother and to an extent with my father also. I realized I got to do something about it because I can't live with a mask anymore. It makes me shrink deep inside because, it's so difficult. Imagine living in a mask, like tightened up, stressed, tensed when we are living in a mask, when we are not vulnerable, when we are scared, threatened that if we open our mouth and express our needs, we'll be rejected, abandoned, shamed. My client message saying, I'm done with my good girl syndrome. I want to say no to people. But I asked her one simple thing: who are you rebelling against?
Welcome to today's conversation. We have Shiivaani Mahajan all the way from India, who's going to talk to us about healing generational trauma. It's a topic that I really want to learn a lot. I've been hearing about it. And we are going to talk about how we can heal trauma through support, our voice, our community voice, and the power that we bring into this community. So we are going to talk about what we carry and what we build. Shiivaani, welcome to the conversation. Can you please introduce yourself to us?
Thank you so much, Prema. Nothing gives me more joy than sharing about what I have been working on and helping people with. And thank you for this opportunity and thanks for inviting me. Yeah, so I'm a lot of things, a lot of people at the same time. But to make it very short, I am someone who has been helping people break patterns, repetitive sabotaging patterns for the past decade and a half. And it started with breaking physical pains and aches for them at the body level, physical level. And the journey went down to helping them with emotional wounds and then generational wounds and parenting wounds. And so basically, I help people change the script of their life so that they start looking at life with possibility. Their reactions change to responses, and then the possibilities open up for them. And a big part of my work includes helping them look at the generational trauma they have carried in their cellular level and then break it open to look at life and experience life very differently.
That's fantastic. That's a great work to do. So, the first question of this root awareness will be, what was one behavior in your family that looked normal but was actually a trauma adaptation?
Yeah, this is a very interesting and an important question, Prema, because, and believe me, I'm not going to talk about just my family, but what I've seen in general, not just with women, but even with men. And that is good girl or a good boy syndrome, which actually looks very normal, which feels like that's how one should operate, that's a good value to have, and that's kindness, and that's being soft and empathetic. But believe me, however normal it looks, it really, really stops you from living the life you deserve. Because a good girl or a bad or a good boy syndrome is basically a sign or a symptom of a dysfunctional family where the child is not supposed or allowed to demand, right? To express, to even think sometimes, I feel. I practice a technique called transactional analysis in my work a lot. And one of the drivers, one of the injunctions that parents unknowingly, they're not doing it consciously, of course, unconsciously, unknowingly give to the children is don't think. And when they are not allowed to think, of course, they lose their expression. And they start feeling that if I don't demand, if I don't have too many needs, I'm a good girl or I'm a good boy. So, very often, children would hear from their parents that you were a good child, you never troubled me, you never bothered me. Well, it is really not a compliment, believe me. It's just a sign that you were suppressed. And so, and I have worked with people who are now wanting to break free from this good girl, good boy syndrome because there's too much to carry, Prema. It's like I have a burden since childhood of meeting someone else's expectations, which feels so normal to me till I become aware that this was not mine to carry in the first place. Because my first duty towards myself, a very highly underrated duty, is happiness for self. It's very underrated, right? And we learn as a very young child, if you don't demand, you're a good girl, good boy, you don't bother your parents, and that's when life would be good and you will be taken care of and you will be loved because you look up to your caretakers, your parents, first caretakers in your life. You look up to them and you don't want to bother them. You don't want to annoy them because it's threatening to your nervous system. So that's one of the biggest clues of a dysfunctional family when the child was given this injunction: don't think, don't demand.
That is a huge realization. Even it hits my body because that's how it worked for me too. So I would like to know how did your body first try to tell you that something wasn't yours to carry?
Yeah, so this is very interesting. So my journey in this healing world or healing industry started with my body issues only. So, and then of course, I just cut the long story short, Prema. I happened to meet a doctor over 6 months of visiting various people in Bombay. That's where I live. And none of the medical fraternity could diagnose what was happening with me. So I happened to visit a doctor in Delhi who is an orthopedic, but he has given up surgery more than 2 decades ago. And he treats people in non invasive ways, through medical acupuncture and magnetic resonance and all that. And he happened to diagnose me. I found the reason for my body issues. And then I ventured into various alternative remedies to help myself get back on my feet. And that's when I realized that the body is actually screaming and giving me certain messages. And then my journey went on practicing a particular technique called the Bowen therapy, which helped me treat lot of people in physical aches and pains and other physical issues too. But there came a time when I started questioning, and I said there has to be something deeper than working on just the physical level, than working on just the connective tissue or the muscles or the ligaments of the body. There has to be something deeper. I had just barely asked this question to the universe, and the answer came that most of us in chronic diseases are basically not able to heal fully because we are avoiding a very important or very difficult emotion. We are not looking at it and we are busy in our bodies because the brain believes that if you look at that emotion, if you try to process it, if you try to bring it to the surface, it's fatal. You might just die or you might go crazy. So let's not look at it. And that was a clear sign for me when I understood this whole philosophy of mind body connection, that every disease or disease, I like to call it disease than disease, starts when we were little children. And the body screams later on. It manifests into a physical discomfort or a physical problem later on in life when the body again starts feeling that it's enough, I can't take this anymore. So pains and aches and things like fibromyalgia or skeletal disorders, all this starts cropping up, even cancer for that matter, by the way. It has its roots in your childhood, and it's a sign of suppressed chronic emotions. And that's how I came to know that my body is experiencing so many psychosomatic symptoms which are not really, which don't have an answer in a medical world.
So if the medical world doesn't have an answer, what is the what is your search brought you to the truth?
Yes. So my search brought me down to a couple of interpretations. One of them is most of the chronic inflammation or chronic disease like arthritis or autoimmune disorders, right? Or even things like diabetes. More, people say that you can correct your diet and correct diabetes, but it goes way deeper than that, Prema. And it's usually repressed anger. I'm saying repressed. I'm not saying suppressed anger. Let's say I have a fight with my partner and I'm in a situation where I can't shout and I can't express that anger, I can't cry. So I'll tell myself, oh, let me deal with it later on. Right now, there are guests around at home and I don't need to, throw a tantrum over here. So I've suppressed my emotion at that time. I'm aware that I got angry, but I have to suppress it. Now, what is repressed? Repressed is something you're not even aware of it exists. It's repressed. So not many people understand the difference in these two words, but repressed is something that is so unconscious that it has not come to the surface. And most probably it will not come to the surface because for my nervous system or for anyone going through a chronic discomfort, it's a threat to bring it to surface. So it's usually repressed anger. Now come to think of it, when you have to, let's say you are forced to do a particular task, right? Or you're forced to be with a particular person you don't want to be with. And you want to scream a no, but you don't for whatever reasons, that I don't have a say and I better keep quiet because mom will be upset. I don't know whether someone will understand me also or not, so let me be quiet. But deep inside, you wanted to say a big no, right? But what did you do? You kept it inside. And I'm talking of situations when we are children, when our prefrontal cortex is not yet developed, but the body is developing. Body still has the memory, and body keeps the score eventually. So the body wants to say no, that I don't want to be with this person, I don't want to do this, but you end up doing it. So where does it all go, Prema? It starts accumulating itself in our tissues, ligaments, cells, and that's why this technique, the Bowen therapy that I was practicing, was helping people get out of depression also. I still practice that, but it's a part of my integrated work now because I moved on to mind body connection and helping people understand how repressed anger is causing it, giving them tools and techniques, to get out of that repressed anger very safely. That was the whole idea. That's how I came to know that bodies really are an important source of information.
Fantastic. That is a big revelation. Even I didn't think about suppress and repress in that way, although I had lived in that way. But the
Ah,
language is bringing a huge awareness in my body. So thank you so
thank
much.
you.
So,
Thank
what was
you.
missing in your childhood that you didn't realize until you became an adult or a parent in your case?
Like I said, it was the good girl syndrome. And I think that was the biggest one. And of course, inability to express because of that. Like I never had the courage to stand up to someone, right? Or I had a problem with authority. I would unconsciously please people. I was not aware I was pleasing till somehow, I don't know how it dawned on me, I have no idea. But one fine day, I had this deep feeling in my body. I was like just outside my house, and I had this deep feeling and awareness that dawned on me that there is something absolutely unaligned in my behavior. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I threatened with people? Why can't I say what I have to say? And of course, my journey started from there, and things like somatic psychology and gestalt and transaction analysis, they just started falling into my lap. And the transgenerational trauma came in, where I realized that it's not just my voice that is throttled, or it's not just my expression that is sabotaged. It has been happening with my mother and to an extent with my father also. So, of course, it is a generational trauma, lack of expression, but at the same time, this experience dawned on me and I realized I got to do something about it because I can't live with a mask anymore. It was like I became aware of my own mask and how it makes me shrink deep inside because, it's so difficult. Imagine living in a mask, like tightened up, stressed, tensed. That's how we do with our, that's what we do to our souls when we are living in a mask, when we are not vulnerable, when we are scared, when we are threatened. That if we open our mouth and express our needs, we'll be rejected, abandoned, ashamed. And so that really stops us from living a life fully. And that dawned on me, and still, I'm still working on it, but I've definitely moved from point A to point B. Things look better. I feel better. I have a sense of power inside me now. I'm trying every day to make a different choice and not just depend on how I was brought up as a child, not just follow that trajectory. But it's still a journey, Prema, right? Yeah,
Of course.
it doesn't come so easy, but definitely from that, you know, timid girl that I was, I have come to a point where I don't allow things to impact me so much anymore.
That's amazing. That's a huge journey, and I think it's a journey that we will be going through every single day.
Every day, like I
Every
tell everyone, it doesn't end till it ends. It doesn't end till it ends.
So when you say like generational trauma, you spoke about how you realize about your parents. How does it work in your body, in our body, when we realize, okay, there are things, it's actually not my emotion. It's not my feeling. This is not who I am. But it's
Absolutely.
actually my parents, my grandparents, maybe my great
Yes.
grandparents, the
Yes.
whole arc. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah. So now, of course, since I learned about intergenerational work and intergenerational trauma and how we all carry it inside us, it has become a very integral part of my work, Prema. And as this lens opened up, I realized that when a client walks into my space for work, he or she is not walking alone. He or she is walking in with the system. Let's say, for example, you are talking to me right now, and I'm there in front of you, but there's an invisible field around us, right? There's a space around us. That space, of course, we can't see what's happening in that space. It's like an empty space for us, but we are connected to the system behind us. Imagine there are like threads or strings, you know, on your shoulder, and there are your parents behind you. Let's say your mother on your left and your father on your right, and then they have strings with their own parents, and then they have strings with their grandparents, have strings with their own parents. See that system. So when you walk in to me for work, I don't see you as an individual, because what is left unexpressed in your system, what was excluded in your system, someone ostracized, someone thrown away, someone not talked about, someone's feelings not processed in that system is still vibrating through those threads, through those strings, with the larger consciousness that you are a part of. That's how I look at you. So, when I have to work with someone, I just bow down to their feel and I tell them, if you feel that by working with your descendant, I can help your entire generational lineage heal, please bring that client to me. Please let them work with me.
That's a huge work that she wanted. This is a pretty good routine for us to realize. If you want to give us some tool, those who have listened to us until now realize that they want to work within themselves to bring forth, because like you say, it's a big
Yeah,
thing when you
yeah.
realize that this whole thing is actually not you. It's more than you. The good girl syndrome and also the independent girl syndrome. It's the same. It's a
It's the
double
same.
bind over there. Yeah, it's a double
Exactly.
bind, and
Thank you for
not many
bringing that
people.
up.
Not
Yeah.
people. Many people realize that good girls are always spoken about, but the independent girl is never spoken about. How I realize it? Because I am that independent girl.
So
And I
beautiful.
realized, like, oh, just by pleasing someone and also saying no to someone who wants to help
Yeah.
me, it's the same bind.
It's the
It's
same,
a
but
double bind. Yeah.
exactly. It's like two
So
sides of the same coin, right? Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, and it can even become worse on the independent side because you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. You don't
Exactly.
realize here
Yeah,
on the good
Prema.
girl side, you're receiving, 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 and both are compressing, just like how you say.
Exactly.
It's like that tree trunk is like growing on top of you, and you're in the bottom, wrapped around, and you're still going down, down, down. It's
How
completely
true.
push and pull.
How true. So I tell, like one of my clients the other day wrote a message saying, I'm done with my good girl syndrome. And I just want to do what I want to do now. I don't want to care about anyone. I want to say no to people. I said, of course, go ahead if you want to be your true self. But I asked her one simple thing: who are you rebelling against?
That's a good question.
Who are you rebelling against? Because at the end of the day, you realize you're a good girl, so the pendulum was on this side. Now you become a rebel and you take the pendulum to the other side, and that's still self sabotaging at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
That's
there is no
also self
symbiosis in
sabotaging.
your there is
Exactly.
no symbiosis in the body because of
Exactly,
that.
right.
Yeah.
That's so you so beautifully brought this up, which not many people talk about because it's only one rant, feminism, feminism, but there is a balance to that also, right?
Yes, that's why in our yoga we have both the divine masculine and feminine together
Hmm.
to become that
Center,
that
exactly,
centered being. And
exactly.
that's
Yes,
that's why I love yoga in that sense, the yogic science, the
yeah,
yogic language that we have
yeah.
within ourselves, within our culture. So the tools for anyone who actually realize that they are holding this trauma, being the good girl
Hmm.
or being the
Hmm.
independent girl,
Hmm.
and now want to release all these ties, like you spoke, from
Exactly.
every all this thread. They want to let it go and they want to become center being, not
Yeah,
the pendulum is not to the left or the right, but the centered
absolutely.
one. If you
Yes,
can give
yes.
us any tool that can root us.
Okay, so one thing that intuitively came to my mind was actually cutting these threads and looking at life ahead and not being tied to it. And how do I do it in my sessions with my clients? I just ask them to visualize that they're tied to these threads, right? Especially women. If they're women and they have this deep uh, good girl syndrome, then I just ask them to imagine their mother behind them, okay, and how they are tied to the mother. There's a bond with the mother, all right, that has been carried on. Of course, the bond will remain, but at the same time, you are different from your mother. You're separate from your mother. You're not your mother, right? So I just tell them to visualize that, and mother is tied to the grandmother, grandmother is tied to the great grandmother, and there's a deep thread, a golden color thread that's going on, let's say, okay? And then I ask them to bring in any divine god, goddess, divine being, any angel they believe in, and I ask them to invite that being in their room, in the presence of their own self, their body, and then they ask that being for a huge tool that can break away these ties which are not serving anymore. It could be a big scissors, it could be an axe, it could be a sword, a golden sword, which has come in their hand now to just break away the ties that don't serve anymore, helping them see that they are different, they are separate, and they have come here to live their own truth. And they take that instrument in their hand, and in one big go, they slash away those threads. And then I ask them to notice what happens in the body when those threads are torn away and they are not connected to them anymore. Of course, the generations behind them stay with them, but only to provide their blessings and only to give them permission to move on. Like I tell my clients, imagine listening to your parents or grandparents telling you you're allowed to move on. You have the permission. And then I tell them to look at life ahead and not look behind and feel tight and constricted and be a good girl or not express or live with money blocks or live with the same back pain that your ancestor lived with or live with that sense of emptiness, hollowness, incomplete feeling in the body. And that's one basic, very, very minor part of the entire gamut of work that we do with the client. But this in itself is a very progressive tool to move on. And then what, if let's say it's about expression and not able to speak up, then I, of course, ask them to make sounds which help them express. And how do we do? And I don't tell them to release, like get angry and release and stamp your feet and hit the pillow. No. Rather, I invite them to go as slow as possible. Like, for example, if they want to express all the grief they have been holding or all the lack of self worth they have been holding, and if I tell them, okay, let's see if this self worth has a sound or a voice, how would it be like? And then I tell them to go slow, Prema, because in my work, my idea is to help them build a capacity to hold that emotion, like to help them become a container. Their body becomes a container that can hold that emotion if it comes up and still go ahead and make a different choice, because that emotion is not concentrated only in the throat. So they make a sound, and the sound could be as simple as uh, uh, that's it. So slow, soft, and bit by bit, you expand that sound. And by expansion, I mean it becomes so distributed in the body that it doesn't impact your responses anymore. Less is more. Less is always more. That's it.
Yeah, well, in the world of women and feminism, it's loud and fast and go stomp it out. But the slowness, the softness, that resonance in your body, I can feel the
Yeah.
vibration when you
Yeah,
speak.
Prema.
That it
Absolutely.
is absolutely true that we are here to realize, to become a better person by holding it, not just letting it go and expect something
Yes.
else to fill that gap. Is to
Yeah.
see it, to feel it, and
Yes.
know that we actually can hold it. That's
Yes.
exactly how we become a
Yeah.
person who understand this arc completely, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
totally felt that when you spoke to me.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
that's how we should feel. Because we
Yeah.
are here to learn. If we keep letting go and replacing something with something
Yes.
else, what are we learning? There is no
Brilliant.
arc of contemplation. We can't
Yeah.
contemplate of
Yeah.
what's happening because we
Yeah.
keep letting it go. And
Yeah.
the current yuga, the current timeline is actually making us to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so fast and slowing down and becoming the container that can hold this. That's
Yes.
how exactly I feel. That is a super
Exactly.
tool. That's a super
Yeah.
for me to hold within even myself. It's a
Thank
great
you.
thing.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prema. I'm
Shivani.
glad you understood what I said. You understood the essence of it also, right? Because for some people and a lot of coaches also, it could be like, but let's release what has come up. There are so many release techniques and tools available, but very few help you hold, acknowledge, see, like you said, can we acknowledge? Can we be with it? Because if we don't stay with it, it is still an unprocessed emotion.
Like how the good girl is being replaced by independent girl.
Yeah.
We keep releasing and something else is being replaced. And we are not
Yes.
taking that moment to see what it is for, what
Yeah.
is showing us. We are not
Yeah.
being with us, we are just doing things. That's what I
Yes.
felt like the
Completely.
within the release and holding technique that you just. Thank you so much, Shivani.
Thank
This is a
you.
brilliant session altogether. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
We will meet again
Absolutely.
for the next episode, and I truly enjoyed the wisdom that you brought in today.
Absolutely, Prema. Maybe next episode we could actually sit down and share some visualizations and real time tools to help people who listen to the podcast to practice it in their own life. Like this little visualization they can definitely practice, but maybe we can go deeper next time.
Yes, yes, definitely. Let's talk about it. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you so much for having me over.